Good morning. We continue the review conclusion of Hemshech Ayin Beis. We are on page 1416. And briefly, to sum up what we've learned, this ended a particular subsection in Ayin Beis, and that section was explaining what the level of who Bezdine, that's where it began, on top of page 1411. I'm sorry, 1411, where he spoke about who. Bezdine. So Bezdine is like Einei Ha'eda, the eyes of the people, like the Sanhedrin, that the Moichin Shebemidas, like the 70 skenim, so 70, 10 times 7, the 7 midas. So it's Moichin Shebemidas, but it's informed by Moshe Rabbeinu, Mufla Shebesanhedrin, because for Atzilus, God imparted from spirit upon Moshe, Ruach Moshe, upon the skenim, in order to guide the people. So that becomes an interface that interacts with the people. That's Einei Ha'eda, similar to the level of Einei Hashem of the Malachim. But then there's the level of Ishen Einei, which is the pupil of the eye. That's the level of Moshe himself, Mufla Shebesanhedrin. Mufla, as the word Mufla, which is, he explained, was Asmis of Chachma, even higher Chachmas Tima Arich, and even higher Atik. This goes back to the bottom and top of page, bottom of page 1410 and 1411. Eina da Atika. With less Smela Bahaya Atika, he mentioned that already there. Okay. And to explain that, and then he went in to explain that, he said that Naveda, this level of who, is the level of Bina, the level of B'chol Nafshecha, which is more than B'chol Avavcha, it's already Mesiras Nefesh. And to explain that, he said, let's break it down to even the 3 levels. Mamala Seviv and Atzmus Ein Sof, that's higher than both. With Mamala being B'chol Avavcha, the divine that we contemplate upon, that's within existence. Hu, Seviv, is the divine beyond existence, which leads to B'chol Nafshecha Mesiras Nefesh. And the third, he's going to say later a bit, as B'chol Moedecha, but he did talk about the third as being a level that's even higher than Seviv, which is the level of that God is the Hu that is higher than the 5 Hu that is connected to good, the Chamisha Hu L'Teva and the Chamisha Hu L'Ra, which is the Hei Chsadim and the Hei Gevurah. So there's a level even higher than Chesed and Gevurah, and that's Atik, that's Chad, that the Chad Hu, he said, Islan Chad Hu Tov Mekulim. So there you have your third level. That level is let's see here, is higher than the Makif being Nimshach into the Pnimi, which is like Avram Hu Avraham. But what he added in the process as well, that we're also transforming the negative. The Chamisha L'Ra also comes from a level of Makif. A Makif that's detached or aloof or indifferent, so to speak, beyond. Where Chashechet Ka'era, Yaakov and Esav are like equal brothers. But then, you want to be Mamshech even a higher level, the Pnimius of Makif, which draws down that the Oyevis Yaakov, the Pnimius, that should come in a Pnimius, not in a state that allows for the negative to be able to glean their energy. And that's the level of Atik, less smaller Bahayatika, that he calls the middle path. That's higher than the 5 and 10 fingers, which are to the right and to the left, Chesed and Gevurah. The middle path connected to the Bris, which is rooted all the way into Das, all the way to Keser. And the 2 explanations he gave for that is Mechuven Be'emsa of the Bris, is either, he explained, that's the Pnimius of the Spheres, or V'yesh Shleima Gamkein. Not really 2 explanations. It's 2 explanations. I should say it's 2 explanations, but not 2 different ones. They are consistent with each other. And Yesh Lemer Gamken is the Kava Emtsai, is the middle called bolt, or the middle rod that runs all the way up to Kesed, to Pnimius HaKesed, which gives the power to transform Midas Hadin into Rachamim, into compassion. This is Yaakov Avinu, Nachla Bli Mitzarim, because it's not limited. Chesed and Gevurah each have their domain, and they're limited in with their boundaries. Nachla Bli Mitzarim is without boundaries because it's a level of Bli Gvul, the third meal of Shabbos, which has the power to transform, and that's Midas Racham of La'elam, the Hu. When we say Hu Elokeinu, Hu Hashem Elokeinu, Ba'aretz Mishpatov, that's referring to the Hu that's greater than the 5 of Chesed and the 5 of Gevurah. And that's where we stop. So we have, bottom line is, we have here the interface between the different levels of divine, Mamala Kalam, Seviv Kalam, with throwing in also the third level, the Shmoi Ha'atzmi, the Helam Ha'atzmi, all the way in this root, which in the Stalshalas comes down to Atik, and that also has the power to transform the negative into the positive. And as we discussed yesterday, we've talked about transforming the negative into the positive earlier, Mamata Lamaila, but as I explained, that was from the bottom up. And here he's talking from the top down, which you could say maybe is the first two levels of transforming Gevurah, of sweetening the Gevurah. I said I didn't want to say anything definitive. We'll see how that plays itself out. Now, the next section, as an introduction to the next section, keep in mind, if you recall earlier, he was talking about, and this goes back to the Maimer HaMagbi in Torah and the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, which we learned at length. If you remember, beginning of that Maimer, when he talks about Ner Hashem Nishma Sodom, that the soul of a person is the flame of God. Ner consists of three things, right? The psila, the wick, is the divine soul. It's immersed inside the oil, which is the intelligence of the animal soul, with the goal of transforming the oil of the animal soul, which initially is focused on its own interests, self-interest, to be directed toward becoming a flame of Hashem. Ava Krish Be'esh. So this explains Shema Yisrael, that the contemplation of a neshama in Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, in the Achdus of Hashem, that everything is ultimately part of an extension of God's unity. When the neshama explains that, the divine soul, the wick, explains that to the oil, the animal soul, that's what causes the animal soul to become sublimated and ultimately become a fuel for the next part of the Shema, V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzarecha. Remember, b'chol levavcha is the first of the three levels, b'chol levavcha chol nafshecha chol meidecha. So the fact is, you see that is quite central here, because it all began on page 14 when he started speaking on 1411, b'prad gimel minei avos, corresponding to mamala, seviv, and atzmos. So therefore, this first level sounds like mamala, because you're explaining to the animal soul on its terms why Elokus is really important, is the primary force, to the point that it causes an ava, love, to want to reveal that Elokus. So though he didn't spell it out that that's the Nefesh Elokus speaking to the Nefesh Abamis, but apparently that is the level. Now that doesn't mean that you can't elevate the animal soul to the other two levels as well. But we haven't gotten there yet. That will be discussed later, especially when we bring the Maimer Magbi together with what he does say in Ayin Beis, later in Ayin Beis, the end of Ayin Beis. So Shema plays a central element here, central role, I should say. And also he brought Shema a few pages back when he spoke about Shema Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem, the two levels of Hashem. The Yichud of what? Of the Havai de Le'ela and Havai de Le'tata, which he said was Seviv and Mamala, Makif and Pnimi. Elokeinu would be, and it becomes Eleinu, it becomes internalized, as he says. So you see here, Shema plays a central role in this whole discussion. So the next section is going to address how ultimately Shema is a force that allows us to besides uniting Makif and Pnimi, also to transform the negative into positive, which is what he introduced now, which comes to explain. Remember, I asked the question the other day, why do we need to know about the Chamisha L'Ra? How is it relevant to this whole discussion here? Chamisha L'Tova, the Hu, makes sense because he's talking about Avram, how you mamshich makif into Pnimi, from the Hu, into Zeh, so to speak, from the Makif, from Seviv into Mamala, and you want to join the two. So there's Hula Teva. Like he said, Hu is from the word, what he called, Haflaga, a continuation, a perpetuation. He wrote that on the top of page 1413 from the Matnas Kohuna, which means, B'li Shinui, you're being mamshik from the immutability of Seviv into the shifts and changes of Mamala Kalaman, as he explained on page 1413. But why do we need to know about Ra? But now when you understand, because the goal here is not just to bring it in Kedusha to connect the two levels of godliness, that which is beyond existence and that which is within existence, the interface, but also we have to contend with and deal with what about the negatives in our lives. This world is not just a world of Mamala Kalalman, which is a divine that's limited to, and tailored to structure of existence. As a result of the Tzimtzum, we also have problems in this world. And what happens with all of that? And he wants to address that also from a Mayla Lamata, Torah Eir, the Aveda Mayla Lamata, the Neshama, through using Torah and Mitzvahs, to transform also the negative. So keep in mind that there's two aspects going on here. One is drawing the higher level of the divine into the lower level of the divine, so to speak, as it relates to existence. And another is transforming din into midas harachmim, and ultimately transforming even the most negative things into positive. And this is the process. So fine. So with that said, it's an introduction to what we're going to learn now, continue learning. So now he says, now if anybody wants to ask anything, because in a way we're ending a certain section, not completely, he's obviously going to make reference to what we've learned, but you could say starting now, like he says, Ubir Inyan, the next paragraph. So before I continue, just want to make sure everybody, anybody wants to clarify anything or ask anything. Okay. So the new paragraph on page 1416, the pages, as always, can be found at ayinbeis.com, where we scanned all these pages into a PDF documents where you can follow it online or print it out as you see fit. Ubira Inyan. His explanation of this Inyan that we're discussing here, and Ubira Inyan really goes on the whole topic. It's not just the last few lines. As we'll see, it's going to expand the whole topic into saying like Yehine Omer Razal say, Kol ha'oine Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba b'chol koachei keiden le'gzar din. Anyone who responds when you say Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba to Kaddish, you say Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba with all his might, with all the literal interpretation of b'chol koachei means with all his might. We'll soon see how Rashi interprets it. But b'chol koachei. So what does it accomplish? A tremendous thing. It keiden literally means it tears up, it abolishes and eliminates the gzar din. Gzar din means any bad decrees. So again, quite fitting to what has happened this week in our lives. Again, we should only know simchas and no more tragedies. But that's one of the powers of Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba, that it abolishes, eliminates gzar din. Why does he use the word keiden? Because as if when you write a decree on paper and then they tear up the decree, that's the symbolism here. So it's called keiden le'gzar din. It's like tearing up the guilty decree that would that designates gzar din, which is a decree of din, of judgment. And the Razal bring a posik proof for this, as always. Shenemar b'preya b'snadev im baruchu Hashem. So the pasuk talks about the prayer means the tribulations, the retribution, I should say, the retribution that Hashem takes out on the Yidden, and the end of the pasuk is, however, bisnadev in Baruch Hashem, when they dedicate and say Baruch Hashem, they bless God, which here is interpreting meaning Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba, it eliminates the prayer. The prayer is like piroyin, repaying a debt. Right. Yeah, he's talking about the retributions that can become. They are eliminated. We can't hear you. You're crackling up. Yeah.
Befroya prois beYisrael.
Right. That's exactly. Befroya prois beYisrael, the retributions that are being demanded from, or being possibly can be placed on the Jews, is being eliminated. Bisnadiv in Birchu Hashem. That's what the pasuk says. So that's a raya. What's Baruch Hashem when you bless God? Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba is saying Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach L'Olam Mamai is Baruch. You're blessing God. That's Baruch Hashem. Okay. Upirush Rashi. Rashi explains how is this pasuk this proof? Sha'idei shemisnadvin levarach es beiron. Aidei bifreya. That through the fact that they commit, or misnadav means they actually dedicate, or they offer to bless God, through that eliminates the befroya. Oh, actually, not kiproya metargaminon bottle. So he's actually teaching here befroya, even though I think in the simple teich befroya means the peronius, essentially as I said, the retributions or the afflictions. But he says perua metargaminon bottle. Peru also has the meaning that Targum Taich's bottle means to eliminate. So I guess he's saying that, Rashi is saying that by being Mevarach Hashem, by blessing God, through that you eliminate the proya. But proya is Yisrael, like is the pasuk. So but proya is eliminating the retributions of Israel. That's how I think he's teaching it. So that is the meaning of this Maimer Chazal and the pasuk. Good. What's b'kol koiche? What does it mean b'kol koiche to say Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba with what? What means with all your might? Does that mean loudly? Does it mean? So he says Pirush Rashi b'kol kavanose, with all its intention, with all his intent, meaning that he's completely intended, completely deliberately focused on this topic. So in other words, if you didn't say b'chol koiche, you could say it with kavana, but not all of his kavana. Here, his whole kavana, his whole intent, completely focused on this. He's going to explain what that means, because what does that mean? What does that mean practically? What's the difference between kavana and kol kavanase? So we're going to learn about that. Gam Pirush, the Rebbe Rashab continues, Gam Pirush b'chol keiche. Maybe, I don't know if Rashi has a second interpretation. I'm not sure if Gam refers to Rashi or the Rebbe Rashab himself is saying this. I'd have to look it up. This is in Tehillim, which pasuk in Tehillim. We can look it up to see.
That's in Shiras Dvoiro.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry.
Not.
Sheftim Kapitel Hey. You're right. My mistake. It's in Sheftim Kapitel Hey. Correct. Shiras Dveira. That's accurate. My mistake. Yeah. Good. Oh, I see. Let's see what was posted. Did Yitzchak post something? Let's see. Oh, here we are. Yeah, he did post it. Right. When Shiras Dveira, after the Milchama with Sisra, okay, they interpret it when locks go untrimmed. Yeah, it's not even when people dedicate themselves. Bless God.
I checked it out on Google Translate, and it talked about like paroa, like wild, like when wild conquers wild. I don't know. If
but here it doesn't mean. Here I believe it means pray like peronius, and peroya means the mimavatal. The pray is be Yisrael. It's the way Chazal interpret it. But
well, I mean, right? But
do you have Rashi? Is there Rashi on this?
In Hebrew, lifra achov means to.
No. It doesn't mean that. It was a lot of stories from the king of the Knoan, Yovin, Sisro. So Dveira Neviah saved them, and then she said the Shiro, when it was Kuonios, a lot of troubles to Israel. Then Bisnadev Om, Baruch Hashem, when they are volunteer to make a war against them, Hashem blessed.
But he was saying that the Rebbe here is saying that it means to come and lifra from the word.
No, he's saying the Targum says bottle, which is like you're saying like peroy and chayiv, like repaying a debt.
Yeah.
So it's like mevatel the debt, essentially.
Yeah.
It could be, I'd have to look, I want to see the commentary. I don't see the commentaries here, so I have to look up the commentaries. Rashi, especially Rashi, maybe in the Targum.
I'll check the Rashi.
If you could post straight from Shaftim, you posted just the translation of the verse.
Right.
If you go to the book of Shaftim, I think it's 5. Oh, here it says here, and if you could post the page with the commentaries, both Targum, Rashi, so we could see what the commentary. If you can do that, that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, good. But regardless, the content is clear that through blessing Hashem, by dedicating themselves to bless Hashem, the pasuk itself can be read several ways if you read it. But the way the Razal explaining it is that when you bless Hashem, Ayin Yehei Shmei Rabba, b'chol keiche, b'chol kavanose, you tear up the Gevurah, which is Peroya, you mevatel the Peroyas, the Peronias, the afflictions, the retributions, the negative elements of that may affect the Yidden, the Jews. Rashi says b'chol keiche, b'chol kavanase. Gam pirush b'chol keiche. Again, we'll find out soon if that's Rashi or that's that the chol keiche from the pasuk that says k'mashikosav va'akta Yigdal na koach Adnai. So in Parsha Vayishlach, when the Maraglim, the scouts, came back with a bad report, and Kolov and Yeshua countered them by saying, no, Israel's a beautiful place. And in the way to counter, they said, one of the things they said, the Ata Yigdal na koach Adnai, which is an interesting pasuk. And now, may the koach of Hashem become more powerful, be overpower them and overpower their complaints. So you see the word koach Adnai. So the Rebbe Rashab is saying, koach, here, b'chol koiche, is like invoking that koach Adnai that Kolov and Yeshua said. And he's going to explain now what that means. So in other words, koach Adnai, why do they have to say that? Because there's, of course, Hashem is always there, but at times when there's a challenge, you need to bring out a deeper power, so you call it Ata Yigdal, not Koach Adnai. That the Koach Adnai should be overpowering. There's different meanings in Ata Yigdal as well.
Rashi is saying only one thing, כשבו פרוצס על ישראל, שפורצו בהם אויביהם על עוזרם אס השם.
So process is like the word, like you said before. I think process is like process when their boundaries are broken open, when they're attacked, essentially.
Yes.
Right. So the Baruch Hashem counters that, and that's what Gevurah said in her shira. Yeah. But Rashi doesn't bring Ata Yigdal na koach Adnai, right?
No.
What does the Targum say there? What does the Targum say on the prayer?
Kad merodu bnei Israel b'oraisa, like Rashi, that asu aleihin amemayo. This is like Rashi, and then
but he doesn't say bottle. So
no.
The Targum doesn't say the word bottle. Okay,
no,
fine. Maybe Targum,
but
Targum
the
Yerushalmi, maybe
David,
Targum Yonus.
What
does it say? What does the Mitzudas David say?
He's saying when the Eibishter punish the enemies, before a price, when the Eibishter made the commerce against the enemies.
Okay, but that's a different type. That's not what he's saying here. Well, it's through Baruch Hashem, when we bless Baruch Hashem, so the Eibishter eliminates the Gzar Din. Okay.
Oh, the Ralbag is saying, before a price, hu me'inyan hashbasa ubitu.
Okay. But here he says, metargamin on bottle, Perua. Maybe somewhere else he's metargam Perua as in bottle. Okay, fine. The idea is clear. Good. So another type, b'chol koiche, means ati yigdal na koach Adnai. So essentially you're invoking the greatness or the power of God's name, koach Adnai, and that's what means b'chol koiche, that when a person says Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba without Koach Adnai, that is Mavatl Gzar Din. But what does that mean? So he's going to explain that now. So he says like this: Dihine. This is interesting. This is, as I said, generally speaking, I would probably skip these sections, but it seems to me the more you learn them, you see that they're all part of the bigger plot. So I don't want to miss anything here. So he says like this: Dihine beposik Bereshis bara. So Bereshis bara lakim, when God created the world, the posik yeshchov ches esius. There are 28 letters in the posuk Bereshis all the way to Ha'aretz. Shashamayim ve'Ha'aretz. 28 letters.
But Rashi says proa means just to overgrow, like it overgrew, the hair that gets overgrown. So it's almost like covering up. I don't know. I'm just giving you the targum.
Yeah, but he's not bringing that pirush. He's bringing the Ch'mayim Chazal. He's only bringing Rashi for B'kol Koiche.
I'm reading a Rashi on Farua in that Parsha Shoftim.
Yeah, but he's not quoting that Rashi. He's quoting the Maimer Chazal is explaining the pasuk the way it. That's not like Rashi necessarily.
I see. No, you were just asking what does Rashi say.
Oh no, I want to know if Rashi brings Ata Yigdal na Koach Adnai.
Oh, I'll check that one. I'm sorry. Let me look at that one.
No, he said Rab Shlomo says he looked already. I don't think he does. Okay. Yeah, here, as I said, this pasuk can be interpreted several ways. He's going here with the. Here, let's not remember, the Maimer Razal is the most important piece here that eliminates the Gzar Din, and they bring the proof from this pasuk. Now let's talk about the second interpretation. Ata Yigdal na Koach Adnai. So there are 28 letters, Koach, letters in the first verse of the Torah, Bereshis bara. Shal Zen Nemar, like Rashi brings there, Koach Maisav Higid la'amai. That God informed his people, his Koach Maisav. That's why the Torah begins with Bereshis bara. Actually, the whole Rashi says, because should it happen that the nations of the world will come and say that you're thieves and you stole the land, that's why I'm beginning the Torah, not with HaChedesh, but with Bereshis bara. You should know, Koach Maisav Higid la'amai. The power of my Maisim, of my creation, I'm informing you, I'm the one that created the world, and I give it to who I want to give it to. First, he gave it to the nations, and from them, he gave it to the Jewish people. That's the whole Rashi. That's not so relevant to our discussion here. The main point is Koach Maisav. Koach. Chav Ches. So the 28 letters in the first verse hint to the word Koach, which is Koach Maisav Higid la'amei, the creation of the existence. The Hari Bereshis Nami Maimerhu. The Mishnah says, the Gemara says, that Asara Maimoris Nivra Elam, that Hashem used 10 statements to create the world. When you count the verses, you're only going to find 9 statements. Yehi Rakia, Teitzer Desha, all the way to Yehi to Nivra Adam, B'Tzalmeinu Kidmusenu, are 9. So the Gemara answers, Bereshis Nami Maimerhu. That Bereshis bara is also one of the 10. The first of the 10 is the very statement that God created, beginning God created heaven and earth. It's a different type of Maimer, obviously. It's a Maimer Kloli that encompasses all of existence, while the other 9 are more specific. But that's what it said. Bereshis Nami Maimerhu. Achu Maimer Kloli. However, it's different than the other 9 statements, because the other 9 statements talk about a specific creation. Yehi let there be light. Yehi Rakia, let there be a firmament. Teitzer Desha, let the earth sprout vegetation. Bereshis bara is saying he created heaven and earth. It's a Maimer Kloli. Shekoil kol ha-Maimoros. That encompasses all the 10. So the first Maimer is an all-encompassing one. So the verse Bereshis, therefore, Koach Maisav has 28 letters, which includes all the Maisim. Koach Maisav, the power of his creation. V'zeu Koach Maisav, shu moker v'sherish kol ha-Maisim shenesavu b'Maisav Bereshis. And that's what we say, Koach Maisav. The power of his creation, it encompasses the root and the source and root of all the creations that were created during the Maisav Bereshis during the time of creation. And that's the hint to the word Koach 28. So that's why there are 28 letters in the verse Bereshis. Just for the record, just an interesting side note, the Zohar says that the Bereshis, the verse Bereshis includes all the 10 spheres. Bereshis is Chachma, Bara is Bina, Elikim is, I believe, Bereshis, Bara, Elikim, I don't remember Elikim, Es HaShamayim, the S is Chesed and Gevurah, HaShamayim is Teferes, and then the S is the next three, Netzach Chayed Yesod, Ha'aretz is Malchus. So I think then Elikim would be Gevurah. I'm sorry, Das, Chesed, Chachma, Bina, Bereshis, Bara, Bereshis, Chachma, Bara, Elikim, I think so. Okay, just as an aside, fine. However, as we've been learning, if you recall, that there's a very different energy that God invests in creation than the energy that He invests in the Shamas and in Torah. If you remember, the Yichud Shalim, the complete union is when He gives birth to the Shamas. Yichud or Zivuga Delay Shalim is the creation of existence. Why? Because when you create existence is a means to an end. God didn't create the world as an end in itself. He created the world in order for neshamas to come into the world inside of bodies and do Torah mitzvahs and transform the world into a home for God. So as we learned earlier, so the chayas that goes into the Olamus is more chitzenius. The pnimius hachayas is in the kavana itself in transforming the world. So he says, this is the level of the outer dimension of Chachma, because God created the whole world with Chachma. He says, Kulam b'chachma sisa. You create everything with Chachma, but it's Chesed Chachma. Shehi reishes sheishtalshelus, which is the beginning of ishtalshelus, of existence. Ishtalshelus refers to the process, the cosmic order to create existence. Moker b'chinas Chesed Gevurah, the b'sheisis yamim osa Hashem, as it serves as a source for the levels of Chesed and Gevurah, which is the main structure of existence. Because if you remember, we talked about that the Eibishter Chesed, the Elam Chesed Yibana, that the creation is through Chesed, because Chesed and Gevurah is already not, Meichin itself is somewhat removed from existence, but the Meichin, as it enters into Midos, and Chesed and Gevurah are the two primary Midos, the right and left, the B'sheisis Yomim Osa Hashem. What are the Sheisis Yomim? 6 days, that's the 6 Midos, which begin with Chesed and Gevurah. That's one way you could interpret. You could say Sheisis Yomim is also Chesed and Gevurah times 3 rather. But I think he means here Chesed and Gevurah Zah, basically. And now we've been learning, if you remember with Einei Ha'eda, it's the Meichin that relates to Midos, the 7 Midos, the 70 Sanhedrin, the 7 eyes. So it's relating to the structure of existence. Essentially, Mamala Kalaman, in the language we've been learning before. That is Koach Absolves of creation, Bereshis Bara. Now, here's the interesting thing. Remember, we're saying now, that's creation. We're saying when you say Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba, you're able to go beyond that because you're able to mevatel the din. If you only go with the rules of creation, like we learned earlier, there's Chesed and Gevurah. We're subject to the laws of nature, or you could say the laws of God, which include either Chesed, which is innocent, or a din, Gevurah, which is guilty. But how do you mevatel a guilt? How do you mevatel a guilty verdict, a din? You need to invoke something deeper. And that's the Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba. So he's going to explain now what the deeper is. So there's the Chav Ches, the 28 Koach Ma'asov. Now say, V'hinei, Yehei Shmei Rabba, Rosh Tevis is Yehei Shmei Rabba. So in Yehei Shmei Rabba, B'varach la'olmo ma'yiz barach, yesh gam ken Chav Ches Esis. there's also 28 letters. So you have now another expression where there's 28 letters. So how does that fit? Because the 28 letters of creation is creation. Here's the 28 letters. By responding to Kaddish with Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba. So Yehei Shmei Rabba has 28 aces, not Omein. So by responding Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba Chol Koachei, with all the Koach, which Koach goes on, also the 28 letters, Mamshich Teisvis Koach, B'Bchinas Koach Maisav. You're now Mamshich an additional, overpowering energy in the Koach Maisav. Because Koach Maisav, again, is the rules and the parameters of existence. That there's Chesed, there's Gevurah, like we learned earlier. There's therefore Chesed, there's Din, there's Chesed, kindness, and Din. But when you say Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba B'chol Koachei, you're eliciting a higher level of Koach, which is even higher than Koach Maisav. Mamshich Teisvis Koach B'chinas Koach Maisav. And that's the meaning now. You should strengthen the Koach Adnai, the Hainu Agdolis V'Teisvis Koach B'chinas Koach Maisav, which means, in addition to the energy that's flowing into existence in a normal, routine fashion, we're invoking and we want to have a higher, powerful energy. Teisvis Koach, that should be Nimshach and Koach Maisav, and should therefore have the power to transform the din, or eliminate the gzar din, like he says. And through that you eliminate, or you tear up the gzar din, the judgment, the negative judgment. So that's how he explained this. So there's two forms of energies. Basically, in the language he used earlier was, in order to gain rachamim, when there's a case of din, teferes, you need to go back to keser. And Keser is a new type, a higher level of energy that overrides, so to speak, to the point that it transforms and goes higher, less smaller b'hai atika, so it has the power to encompass din, should be what he called earlier, smaller skala b'yamina, midas adin nepach l'b'chinas harachamim. So that's how he explained it now in the context of Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba. Any questions?
Yes. First, I posted several targumim of Yigdal Koach Hashem.
Okay, good, thank you.
So it's consistent with what he just said about power and intensification or increase of power. My question is, at least here, the Rebbe says, Tosfos Koach B'Bchinas Koach Masav. Oh, it's at the level of the power of Masav. I was thinking, if you're thinking of Masav, you're talking about essentially the creation, really Asiya. Let's just say Biyah, the lower creation. And so one would think that in order to be Mavatel, that Koach, or those rules and consequences, that one would need to intensify a higher level, not that level, but it says koach masav, so it's the potential for his creation. It's not the actual creation. Is that a fair way to touch it?
Koach masav means the koach within his creation, and you're being mamshech into it. Koach adnai yigdal, an additional koach from a higher level, so it should be able to transform din to rachamim.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. V'hu k'de'isa b'seder ayim, and this is like it says, Seder Ayim is a sefer, I think from the 15th century, maybe 16th, maybe even later, not positive. Seder Ayim, it's a sefer that's quoted a number of times in Chesed. He says that there he brings hatam al zeh, the reason for this, the koach hu beis pamim yad. So now he's going to connect it to the 10 fingers. Koach 28 is twice 14, right? And the two yad, the two yadayim, should be yad. The koach hu beis pamim yad. So it's twice 14. Shebiyad yesh yudal pirkin. In a hand, there are 14 joints. So every finger, I think, has 3. And one of them, I think, has 2. I think the thumb has 2, the other have 3, if I recall correctly, something like that. Or the pinky has 3, yeah. So basically, there are 14 joints. That's Yudalit. Hainu. Betzboy sayat shleisha b'chol esba. Yeah, right, there you go. 3 in each finger, that makes 12. And shnayim ba'gudal. And 2 in the thumb. So there you have yad. And twice yad means 2 hands. So you have 28. Basically 28 joints. Uba Mishnah Perek Aleph Ba'oles, in the Mishnah in Oles, where he counts it talks about different limbs. He says, Isa Shisha B'chol Ezba, that there are 6 in each finger. Hainu Ad Akona. So that's explained. Ad Akona means, I remember we discussed this when we learned it the first time. It's counting not all the way till what is this called? The corner, the wrist, or I think the wrist. So there, the joints are not just the fingers. He continues all the way up to the wrist, if I recall correctly. So it's not a contradiction. Because first of all, the fact is there are only 14 joints on each hand, on the hand itself, the fingers. If you count all the way to the wrist, I think the wrist, or maybe
Kana, it's the forearm. Kana is forearm.
The kana is the forearm. Okay, sorry. So it goes all the way up, right? All the way to the forearm. So then there's 6. But the hand itself, meaning just this part, is counting the fingers, is like that. Okay. Ubeis pomim yad, shu yad yamin v'yad small. The twice yad means the 2 hands.
I saw now what you said before about Kol Oina. This is not in Shoftim. This is the Gemara in Masechet Shabbos, Daf Kuf Yutes Amud Beis.
The pasuk b'proya is in Shoftim.
Yeah, the Gemara brings the pasuk.
I understand the Maimar Azal is not in Shoftim, obviously.
Yeah, but the Rashi in the Gemara is saying B'chol koichoi, B'chol kavonosoi. And Kohen lo exar dinai, I don't have the continuation, could be
does he
that
bring
the
also
Rashi in the Gemara.
In the Gemara, does Rashi in the Gemara bring Ata Yigdal na Koach Adnai?
I don't have here the
Yes,
Gemara.
I put, well, not in the Gemara. I posted Rashi.
No, Rashi doesn't bring Ata Yigdal. No, the Gemara. I'm asking
Maybe
the Gemara.
maybe the Rashi in the Gemara. Maybe I don't have it in front of me because
I found a Rashi on
Gemara?
Yigdal.
In Gemara?
We're not talking about the Rashi on Yigdal. We're talking the Rashi on Beproya. I'm sorry, B'chol Koichai. Of course, there's a Rashi. We're talking about the Rashi. Is Rashi say the same Rashi that says B'chol Kavanose in the Gemara is Rab Shlomo? I'm asking you. Look in the Gemara.
I don't have the Gemara in front of me.
Shabbos?
Shabbos Kuf Yites Amud Beis. So
okay,
it starts off here, but it's possible. But the Rebbe Rashab is saying here, the whole pshat, Porua Metagimena bottle, Alidei Shemisnadin Vorech, could be that Rashi is saying it in the Gemara.
Yeah, I don't think so, but okay, could be. Okay, we got to look it up. It's not a complicated thing. We'll look it up in Gemara. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so continuing on, base pomim yad is yad yamin v'yad small. Hu begematria koach. That adds up to the number 28. B'zeh inyan chavches itim shebekeheles. So in keheles you also have ace, the famous expression, there's a time to weep, there's a time to celebrate. So he counts 28 time periods there. Shebekeheles, Yudal itim l'teva, 14 positive, Yudal itim l'ra, and 14 negative ones. V'heim ben shachim mebeis yodis yamin u'smoil. And that's nimshach from the two hands, the right and the left, Chesed and Gevurah. So you see right away, he's connecting all this now to what we learned earlier about Chesed and Gevurah, the 10 spheres in Sefer Yetzirah that are the 10 fingers, Chomesh al Chomesh, and then the bris be'emtza, like he called it, mechuven be'emtza, is Tiferes that goes up all the way to Keser, which has the power to transform din to rachamim. So all this is now being connected. So it all began with Chol Koiche. When you say B'chol Koiche Ati Yigdal Koach Adnai, the power of Koach from Adnai, which is more powerful than the Koach, that's an additional strength that so-called overpowers Koach Maisav, allowing us to transform and eliminate the din. So now he's connecting it from Seder Ayim to the 28 to the two hands is the 28 of creation. We'll soon see how it finishes. So that comes from the two hands, right and left. Okay? And these are the Tchovches Itim again, just like we learned earlier about Chamisha L'Teva, Chamisha L'Ra. Remember? There's 5 for the Tev, who, and 5 that are negative. So here too you have 14 positive and 14 negative. The Shorsha Me'eser Spheres, and this is rooted in the 10 spheres, Shem B'misper Eser Atzbois, because the 14 joints are in the 5 fingers. So and 5 times the 28 joints, I should say, from both hands are from the 10 spheres, the two hands. So it's boys Chamesh neged Chamesh and Chesed and Yehei Gvarim commission is Gevurah, Yehei Gevuros commission is Gevurah le'el. So there you have the connection between the 14 and the 14, adding up to 28. The Teva 14 positive, 14 negative, rooted in the 10 spheres, which are the 5 fingers on one hand and the 5 on the other hand. U'mechomish as boys shel yad yamin nimshachim yud aleph itim l'tev. From the 5 fingers on the right hand come the 14 time periods in the positive. V'inin chamishu l'teva, that corresponds to the 5 l'teva, the who, like Avram, the 5 times it says who for good. U'mechomish as boys the yad smel. We're on the next page, 1417. And from the 5 fingers on the left hand, Gevurah nimshach yudal itim l'ra, which correspond to the chamisha hu l'ra, the 14 periods of time that are negative periods. That is the structure of existence. Ach, now we're going higher than existence. We're going now l'mayla mishtalshus. Ach ha'eina Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba b'chol koiche. Now, to counter this koach, which is power, now you have Chesed and Gevurah. But we want to go deeper because we want to eradicate and eliminate the Gzar Din. We want to transform the Din to Rachamim. When you say Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba with all B'chol Koiche, with the entire Koach, Shenimsha b'bchinas Koach ma'atzmus ein sof, the Lav, b'kol inun Midos iyu klal. So now you're drawing from Koach of Atzmus ein sof higher than the spheres. Like it says, he's Lav b'kol inun Midos iyu klal. He's beyond Midas. That's the expression in Zohar, Tikkun Zohar, that the Eibus says, Lav B'kol Inu Midas. He's beyond any Midas. Paschalio, right? So now you're accessing that higher level. He's beyond Midas, beyond the Midas of Chesed and Gevurah. Like we learned earlier, when you go to Atik, less small of a high Atik, you're beyond the Midas. And that's the vav, because you say, don't say b'chol koyach, You say b'chol koychei. So the Rebbe Rashab is now being medayik. What's the vav? Not just koyach adnai, but koychei, because the vav indicates hamshacha, that you're drawing down from there into histalshlus, into the midas. Sha'al yedei zeh, when you do that, nisapach miyad small liyes gam ken yad yamin. You transform that from the left hand should also become right. No, it's a chesed. Gevurah also becomes chesed or rachamim. U'kameshakosov, like we say in Oz Yashir, Yemincha Hashem nadari b'keach, Yemincha Hashem. You say twice Yemincha Hashem. Why? Beis pamim Yemin, mishum the less smaller. Twice Yemin, because there's no smaller b'hai Atika, there's no left in Atik when you're mamshech from that level. So it's twice Yemin. So it's like two right hands, so to speak. In this case, like double, the Gevurah has been transformed into Chesed. V'zehu inyan havov shemamshech mebchinas lav mekol inun midos ihu. Klal is the full expression. That you're mamshech from a place that's beyond midas. That's the vav keichei. Ukiyadua, and now it connects it even further. The vav hu briach hatichin. Vav, like a line, is compared to briach hatichin, the middle bar, the middle rod, or the middle bolt. Different words are used for it. The central bolt, the central connector. Like we said, teferes hamavriach min akotza lakotza, that runs from one end to the next. Remember, teferes connects from the lowest all the way up to Chesed. The other bolts, the other brichim, were only connecting one wall to another. But briach hatichin, the middle one, that's the vav. So the vav is the level of teferes. That's briach hatichin. That's why it's like a vav, a line, an extended line that flows from the highest down to below. V'yadua the briach hatichin u'shemavrich min aktsei hayesed elyon, min ktsei yesed elyon, that the middle rod is known, extends. Mavriach literally means runs. It runs like from the word borach, from the highest end at ktsei hayesed tachton to the lowest end. Literally the entire spectrum, from one end to the next. And this means, as we learned earlier, that you're mamshech from primis hakeser. This is also the meaning that vav is the letter for emes. We know vav is connected to the word emes. Emes is the level of I am the first and I am the last, and beyond me there's nothing else, no other God, no other power.
Why is vav emes?
First of all, as a state says, vav is the midas emes. The havana of it, the understanding of it, is because emes is the letters aleph, mem, sof, is mamish like that. Aleph is the first, anir rishen. Sof is the last. Mem is the middle letter, the 11th letter in the Hebrew alphabet. So you have emes, it runs from the beginning through the middle all the way through the end, like briach hatichin. That's the explanation. But generally speaking, the vav they say is midas emes.
Maybe sure because it's Yaakov. Yaakov Avinu is Titan Emes Yaakov, and Yaakov is a Zeranpin. He's the vav.
That answers the question. Okay.
Yeah, because it's parallel. It parallels Yaakov and vav.
Yaakov is Teferes.
And Emes. Teferes and Emes.
Okay. He mentioned Yaakov before.
Also Kav Emtzai, like we talked about.
Yeah. He tells us to look in volume 2, 742. Maybe there's something there that's worthwhile looking up. Okay. And now he concludes and says, and that's why, through this process, through saying Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba b'chol kochei, Kedin Gzar Din, you eliminate, you eradicate the judgment, the decree of judgment. L'fi shenimtak midas hadin v'nepach lechesed. because the Midas Adin has been sweetened and transformed to Chesed. Interestingly, earlier in the previous page, he said Nepach L'Rachamim, if I recall correctly. Let me see. Yeah, Nepach L'Rachamim. That's not a contradiction, obviously. Both are correct. But basically, the Midas Adin, here he's saying twice Yamin, so it's like twice Chesed. But there, it was talking about Teferes is Rachamim that transforms the Gevurah into Rachamim.
There's a whole Alter Rebbe on this Likutei Torah that I just posted.
Let me just finish 1 second. V'ze'in Chadhu. Now he's bringing it back to the Medrash Chadhu, where he said back to the Medrash Chamisha L'Teva, Chamisha Hu L'Teva, and there's Chamisha Hu L'Ra, and then there's Chad Tov L'Kulam Chadhu Hu Hashem Elokeinu Shezeh B'chinas Atik Kadisha the less smaller. That's referring to the third level, the higher level than Chesed and Gevurah. That is Atik Kadisha less smaller. I keep saying third level. I have to correct myself because the Medrash is not saying there are 3 levels. There's Chamisha L'Teva, Chamisha L'Ra, and then there's one good that's even greater than them all. So we didn't really establish whether the Teva and Ra are 2 levels. I said there are probably 2 levels in Makif, but Chamisha L'Teva, remember he said, was bringing Avram into Avram, so it's Makif into Pnimi. So it could be that you could interpret it in general as the second level, like we saw earlier, like Ishin Einai. But then when he broke it down into 3, there was Mamala, Seviv, and Atzmos. That's why I keep going from 2 to 3, just pointing that out. So just if anybody's going to be has any confusion about it. So Zeh B'chinas Bris Yochid, going back now to the Sefer Yetzirah, that Mechuvan Be'emtza, the Bris Yochid, which is Chad Bris Yochid, Antu Chad, like he said before, Antu Chad v'lei b'chushban, that you are one and beyond the accountable one, meaning beyond the number one. V'zeu hagdolas hakeach b'chinas teis v'seir meb'chinas atik. And that's what he means before when he said hagdolas keach. It's like when you, let's say, exercise. So what happens is you're drawing more energy from your inner resources and faculties to your outer faculty. So this process of Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba is drawing empowering the Ishtalshalos, the Chesed and Gevurah with a Tesus air from Atik, which in turn has the power to transform the Gevurah into Chesed. Valkein b'chol ha'aretz mishpatav, like we said, Hu Hashem Elokeinu b'chol ha'aretz mishpatav. We said Midas Rachamim la'elam. What was the expression there? Midas Rachamim la'elam. Mishpat iyu rachamim shemidas rachamav le'elam. So even though it says mishpat initially, mishpat means judgment, like din, but mishpat is also iyu rachamim. It says in I think in Zohar that mishpat is the level of rachamim because shemidas rachamav le'elam, his midas of rachamim is forever and all pervasive, which therefore less smaller because there's no din in Atik, so it's all rachamim. And that's what transforms from drawing from there through Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba b'chol keicha. When you say it with entire kavana, you draw from Atik into the Midos, from Koach Adnai into Koach Maisav, and thus transforming Gevurah to Chesed. So this completes what he spoke about before, but he's now, as we'll see, I mentioned before Shema, the next paragraph is going to go into understanding how this is achieved through saying Shema. Even though right now he spoke about Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba in general in Tefillah, whenever you say Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba throughout davening. But he's going to explain it soon more in the next paragraph. I jumped the gun a bit when I gave my introduction because I was referring to later the next paragraph. But it's the same flow. Okay, we stop here. The floor is yours. Anybody wants to ask anything?
Yes, I'm a little confused about this is that Gevurah is being converted to Chesed, it says earlier, and then now Rachamim, which are 2 different Midos, and I was just wondering how that's working out here, how that's connected. I'm confused a little about that.
I just addressed that.
Yeah, I know, but
Well, So first of all, earlier he said Midos HaRachmim, now he's saying Midos HaChesed. So first of all, in Chassidus, sometimes things are interchangeable and he's not getting into the details. Bottom line is Chesed and Rachmim have something in common. They're both positive. Gevurah has the side of judgment and din, which means somebody may be guilty. So Chesed and Rachmim, it says in many places, are essentially very similar. Obviously, Rachmim is deeper than Chesed. That's why it's the Kavam Tzoi. So overall, in Chassidus, sometimes it's not negay here to go into the difference, so it's interchangeable. More specifically, the point here is being that through reaching a deeper place, and that's through Tiferes Rachamim, we're drawing down, first of all, Rachamim, compassion, but we're also drawing that it should be Chesed. When you say La Smala B'Hayatika, you're saying there's no din, everything is Yamin, like you said twice Yamin. Yamin is Chesed. So therefore, you have both. You have both Rachamim and Chesed. That's the simplest way to explain it.
Yeah, I have a question. It's more practical. So we say Yehei Shmei Rabba when someone's saying Kaddish. It could be Chatzi Kaddish, could be Kaddish Shalom, but looking at Kaddish Shalom and Kaddish the Kaddish for mourners. So I'm wondering if one of the reasons why that pasuk is in there is we say Kaddish, trying to of course declare God's greatness, but it's supposed to be good for the neshamas that you're in mourning for. And I wonder if part of the inyan there is to help nullify any evil decrees or blemishes on the neshama over which you're saying Kaddish. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, that sounds good. He doesn't say it here, but what
seems
you're
like a
learning
logical
can be applied to that.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get into the Chazal. Don't say who's Gzar Din. Maybe you have to look up the Gemara to see what decree are we talking about. Talking about the person who's saying the Kaddish, or is it the person?
Right, I get it.
Or
but you're standing in for when you say Kaddish.
And also, as you said, it's not only Kaddish Yosem, it's also Kaddish other Kaddishim. So it sounds to me that Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba, just in general, has the power to pierce heaven and draw down this higher level of Rachamim. But there's no problem saying that it also includes any Gzar Din that may be on the neshama that has passed. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
And a follow-up, just because I have the question more in the engine of this, like what's happened. I mean, you've explained it very clearly, but still, just tracing the flow, we started out talking about Chamisha Latov, Chamisha Lara, and the Chadhu, the one above that's above that where the Chassidim can neutralize the Gevurah. So then we said there's 28 letters in the Yehei Shmei Rabba, which corresponds to two hands. So you've got two hands and 5 fingers in each hand, but 14 joints in each hand. So essentially, that's the flow. But the question is, with 28 letters, you seem to have only the 2 hands. Where is this extra koach coming from above? Just by saying 28, unless you say it with great, koach, great power.
So he explained there's 2 levels of koach. Yeah. And I explained, there's the power of God in creation, koach maisov, which is basically the 2 hands. That is the koach maisov of how much energy he invests, which, like he says,
in the creation.
Because it's not the purpose. Then, based on that, there's a certain rules and parameters and cause and effect, and there's Chesed and Gevurah, but if you want to override that, so to speak, I don't know, the word override is maybe not the right word, but if you want to go beyond that, so you go to the next level of koyach by you saying B'chol koyche Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba, which creation on its own doesn't have an Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba. That's our effort. That's our avodah. You're saying it with all your might, with all your koyach. That koyach is drawing now from Atik, which is higher than koyach Maisov. You're Ata Yigdal no koyach Adnai, and you're drawing a deeper level of koyach from Atik into Ishtalshlus that now you have the power to transform. It's like, I don't want to say the word tshuva because this is not through tshuva, but it's you're evoking a higher level that has the power to transform the usual two hands of Chesed and Gevurah, that the Gevurah should be transformed to Chesed.
I see. So it's the emphasis on, I mean, saying, not just saying Yehei Shmei Rabba,
It's b'chol koichai.
but kol koichai, right. By the way, I said the Alter Rebbe I posted has, well, the Gemara talks about b'kol koichai, and the Alter Rebbe has this whole sugi about nedrai b'koach. And it's worth looking because it's right on point.
There are many, many Maimarim on this topic.
Oh,
I didn't even go. Yes,
you're not surprised. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a big topic in Chassidus, and so the Rebbe. I would probably even say, I have to look it up, that even this section is probably quoted from Maimarim from the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek.
Yeah, probably. It's almost identical. So, but there's a question from Mr. Howard Rosenberg in the class. He typed it in the chat. He wants to ask a really balabatisha question. Can I ask a practical question? He writes, if we believe everything that happens is by Hashgacha Pratis and mentions not even a leaf can turn without Hashem's will, then we can deduce that if there's 100, this has to do with Israel and hostages, that we can deduce that if 101 hostages are still missing in Gaza, it's because there's some divine decree they should be there. So would it be fair to say, if everyone or at least one person says Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba with all their might, they can soften this decree, and then the hostages will be immediately freed? And Tzvi likes the idea.
Look, I don't know if there's magic pills and buttons to press, but that's why so many Jews are saying Tehillim, are davening with more kavanah, giving more tzedakah, and I would include Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba in there as well, based on this Maimar Chazal. So absolutely, I can't speak for God, but based on all God's promises, He says that when you'll pray to me, and you'll reach to me, in all ways, like I said, that's why millions and millions of Tehillim and Tefillos have been said, and I'm sure Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba has been said with Kol Koichai, precisely to eliminate that Gzar Din of the hostages, as well as others. Now, you could always ask, so what happened in Dubai this week? What happened in UAE? We don't have answers to these mysteries of God. So bottom line is we have to continue hammering away. Yes, now that we've learned this, say Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba with all your koyach, with all your kavanah, and that's what we're promised, that it will pierce. The hope is that it should be done immediately, quickly, and over with. That's my answer. Yeah.
But if I can add one idea about why din can be transformed either to Chesed or to Rachman, we can only imagine the din that interrupt immediately, right away. And sometimes din is not, it's not developed in this way as we imagine it. The din can be canceled during the whole process of the din. Even at the end, the din can be transferred to a Chesed because the test itself transforms the person into something better. And later we can see, as we used to say, we will be like a dreamer, and everything when we pass through, we will see as good. That's why din can be transferred either into Chesed, that means we will see it later, or into the Rachamim that immediately canceled, and Rachamim would bring us to a different reality right away. And this is how we can perceive din in a development, in a developed stages. You understand?
I hear what you're saying, yeah.
Reb Nachum Chernobyl was fat from saying, the Rebbe Rashab wrote it also.
Omein Yehei Shmei Rabba, yeah. Yeah, physically, because of the great pleasure that he had in saying it. So I don't know if it helps this helps understand why, but that's correct. Okay, so let's stop here. End of the paragraph, page 1417.
Question for everybody before you turn off the recording. Since tomorrow is Thanksgiving Day, can we start at 7 a.m. or sorry, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific instead of the regular 6:30? Is that a problem for anybody?
I'm fine with it.
Oh, you have to say, you're saying how?
Well, in my dreams, I am. Remember, I'm 3 hours behind everybody. At 6:30, I start the class.
Yeah, we could do that. That's fine. Like Sunday, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I'll post a note as well.
Okay. So we're stopping here in the middle of page